Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Art with Chrystal Phan. And my name is Liz Crocker and I'm a learning program developer here at the Royal BC Museum on the learning team. And I am here with local artist Chrystal Phan. And we are going to do sort of an official introduction on our PowerPoint presentation in a minute here. But Chrystal, why don't you just quickly tell us a little bit about yourself before I go into the PowerPoint?
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I am an artist, as Liz already said, and I am a second-generation Vietnamese-Canadian person, which means my parents were first generation. They came here to Canada in 1980 as refugees, and I'll tell you more about that later.
Thanks, Chrystal. All right, so today we are here. We're joining you from the traditional territories of the Lekwungen, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and we extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live and learn on this territory. If you're joining us today from Facebook or in the Zoom, you could write down what territory you're joining us from. If you know it, or if you know the Indigenous language of the territory you're in, please feel free to write that in there. We'd love to hear that. And so if you're not exactly sure where we are, if you're not in Victoria, we are way down on the southern tip of Vancouver Island on the west coast of Canada and British Columbia. Way down there, that red dot is us. Kind of hard to get to us, which is why these virtual programs are great, because you can get us from anywhere. And here's a picture of the museum and that we are in. Chrystal and I are on the left-hand side of that building, way in the back. So now the next few slides are related to you. So I'll let you tell us a little bit more about your story, Chrystal.
Okay, well, as an artist, I paint a lot about my family experiences. So I just wanted to share a little bit of how my family came to Canada to give you some context about where my work comes from. This is actually a photo of some pieces, some objects that my parents came to Canada with, which were few. My family escaped Vietnam actually after the Vietnam War. My father was only 19 years old when he had decided to escape with two of his other friends, and they were secretly fixing up an old fishing boat that belonged to my grandfather. And their plan was to sail to Singapore, but of course, being a small village, word spread really quickly, and by the time they were ready to escape in the night, there were more than 21 people on that boat, including my mother. And not a single person had any sailing experience. And so when they escaped in the night, luckily they were able to do so safely, but by the next morning their engine had broke, and their water barrel had broke. And just to give you an idea of the size of their boat, it was basically like an ocean canoe, about 24 feet long and 4 feet wide for all these people. And so they sat there for 3 whole days thinking that they were going to die, until the third morning my father saw a helicopter in the distance, and he watched it as it landed on what he described as a stick in the water. And so he said, I don't know what that is, but that's where we're going. And so they rowed there for 6 hours until they reached what turned out to be a Dutch oil supply ship. And luckily the captain took them on the boat and dropped them off a few days later at Pulau Bidong, which was a refugee camp in Malaysia, the largest refugee camp in Malaysia at that time. And from there, they sought refuge or asylum in different countries. And they had applied to Australia, Sweden, the United States, everywhere. But Canada was the only place that would take them because they wanted to stay together. So it was my father, my mother, her 2 brothers, and a nephew, so 5 altogether. And that's how they came to Canada.
Thanks for that description, Chrystal. And we've got that slide up showing the Pacific Ocean, and the perspective might not be entirely correct, but that's just a massive ocean, all that blue, and imagining being on this 23-foot boat, which is about 7 meters. is just mind-blowing. And Jenny, when she gets a chance, will put a link up to our learning portal. Chrystal contributed some material for our learning portal, and in that there is some, I think there's some articles and some photos of people and links to information about that refugee camp. That it was Pilau Bedang.
Yes.
Is that what you said? Yeah. So we'll put that link in the chat, and you can look further. Okay. Another picture.
So shortly, I think, well, I was born 1982, so 2 years after my parents had arrived. They had my sister already, and this is a picture of them in Victoria, BC, where we are right now, celebrating the first month of my existence. So you can see all of the adults there and the little boy there. That was everyone who was on the boat who came to Victoria together. And this little ceremony, you can see it has candles and incense and food there to celebrate a 1-month-old me. And here you see me, my sister, and my mom, and my great uncle. So my father's uncle and his family were also on that same boat, but they had applied again to everywhere, and they were granted asylum in Australia, so that's where they went. And here is my family's first car, which Liz knows is a...
Pretty sure it's a Pinto.
Okay. I don't know what it is.
Ford Pinto. Some people might know what that is.
And people might remember this if you were around in the 80s. This is, I think, our only family portrait. It's a Sears studio portrait where you get dressed up and go to the mall as a family to get a photo done. And you can see the clothes in this picture. My mother actually sewed everything.
Wow. I certainly had a family photo taken at Sears, and all my friends did too. It was the thing. Even in the 70s.
A
and
very
the 80s.
Canadian
Yes.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, thank you, Chrystal. So what we're going to get a chance to do now is look closely at a couple of Chrystal's paintings, and those again are also on the learning portal. Jenny shared a link. Thanks, Jenny. So you just to refer you back to the first slide that we had of Chrystal, showed her with two of her paintings on either side, so you get a sense of how large they are. In real life, they're actually quite big. So hopefully you can click on it on a big screen and see how large they are. Get them as big as you can, because the detail's amazing. So what we're gonna do is Chrystal and I are gonna demonstrate how you might want to look at a painting, and then we're gonna show another one of Chrystal's paintings, and then you can try that out yourself with the other painting. So for example, we're just going to pretend that Chrystal's not the artist and pretend that Chrystal's never seen this painting before. And so she's sitting here with me, we're looking at this painting. And so you can make your own observations, make up your own questions. But an example of a question might be, why don't you describe to me what is going on in this picture, Chrystal? What do you think is going on here?
Well, as someone who's never seen this painting before, I might say, well, it looks like a pool party. Looks like a family might be in this pool. Looks like maybe a private house pool, and that there's a lot of people, maybe a multi-generational family.
Yep. Thanks. And then you could. Yep.
And the question I might ask you is, so Liz, what does this painting make you feel?
Well, it actually makes me feel sort of happy right away, just because I love bright colors, and I love all the bright colors, and I love seeing the children in the pool with the adults, and in fact there might be older adults sitting on the side of the pool. That reminds me of my own childhood and some nostalgia. So yeah, and it's just beautiful. The colors are beautiful, and it looks like there's a plant beside them on the pool there, and that makes me happy as well. So I get actually quite a nice feeling from this painting. So there's an idea of what some questions, if you were looking at art with somebody else, you could do it, or just on your own as well. So what we're going to do is go to the next painting here. It's a little bit different. So if you're with somebody at home or in a classroom, you can do this in partners, or you can do it on your own. So we'll just give you about a minute to look at this painting, which is different for sure in colors. And yeah, maybe just think about what's going on there. And if you want to, you can type in the chat or Facebook any of your thoughts about this painting, or some observations, what it makes you think of or feel. No pressure. we'll just give you a little bit of time to do that. And then we're going to go into a drawing activity. So, yeah, think about getting paper and pencil ready for that. Somebody's saying it makes them want to eat watermelon. Yes.
Me too.
Yeah. I'm feeling a little hungry because it is lunchtime. So maybe we picked the wrong painting to look at. But yeah, for sure.
Though I always want to eat watermelon. It's probably why it's always in my paintings.
Oh, okay. So there's a theme of watermelon in your paintings.
Often.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, I love the detail in there. And I love that when I'm looking at that wall, let me just look a little closer. I'm guessing it's wallpaper, but I don't know. I love how some people are talking and some people are just focused on the food. Okay. Give you a little bit more time to look. It looks like there must be lettuce in the bowl, maybe. Okay. All right. So there's some observation time. Obviously, you can go back and look and take as much time as you like because it's all on the learning portal. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get to some drawing, which the first part of drawing seems to me is observing and looking at things.
That's right. So what we're going to work on is a very simple drawing. So if you're looking back at this painting, you see in the kind of in the back there, a woman is putting chopsticks into what is basically a wok. For those of you who don't know, it's a kind of a pot pan thing that's very common in Asian cooking. And so we're going to take this simple object and start with the drawing. And a question I get a lot is, how do I make things more realistic, more 3D? So I'm going to show you show you how to add values to your drawing or your painting to make things more 3D. So we're going to first draw the object first. We're going to learn about shading and values, and then we're going to go back and add them to our drawing.
Okay, so you're going to get 2 chances, and nobody has to see it but you, so don't worry about it. So we're going to go look at our object here.
So here is our wok, and if you notice, I'll move it around so you can see it in context. So it's flat, but it's round, and it's basically a circle, and just notice its shape, its basic shape. What I notice is that basically it's a circle with handles. So we'll just give you a minute to draw that real quick.
Okay, we're gonna time it. We're gonna look at the clock. Give you about a minute. So this initial first sketch it's just like a quick sketch, really.
Quick sketch,
Getting the shape of it. Okay.
Don't worry if it's not perfect. You can draw over your lines. You don't need to erase your lines. Oh, there's my feet.
Oh yeah, they are showing up on camera. That's good. So do you start? Oh, nice. It was full screen. Is it not full screen? That is weird. Thanks for putting that in the chat, Kim. It is showing that it is full screen on my end. Let me try this.
I believe that was when we did the painting.
Oh.
Without, yeah. Oh, yeah.
If I do this, does that change it, Jenny?
No.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the way it was. Okay, I think.
As people are drawing, there's a question of how do you overcome not making it perfect the first time?
Oh, yes. This perfectionism can really prevent you from moving forward, and that's a real thing. Just trust. I don't know what else to say. I just say trust that it's never going to look perfect at first, and keeping your lines there that are wrong is a really great way to show you where that is, so that you can use it as kind of a framework to put a different shape on. So I always leave my wrong lines on as a guide, so that I can use it as a guide to create my, does that make sense? To put the, otherwise then I'm just starting from scratch. So each each iteration of your circle, for example, helps bring you to the right circle. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And I think, no expert, but I think there's lots of evidence with creativity that once you start doing, you're actually like doing it in your body, you get out of your head, and then you get past that perfectionist block.
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah, because it shows up in lots of artistic disciplines. So we're going to see Chrystal's first sketch. There we go.
As
There
you
we
can
go.
see, my sketch, I've got all my wrong lines. Still not perfect, but that's okay. And I use my wrong lines to show me where I need to put the circle. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah, that's a quick sketch. So, and that's just an outline of the shape, basically. So what we do is we add shading to make it more realistic, and which is our next step.
Okay.
But in order to do so, we have to think about values. So this is an example of a value scale. You'll see them with different numbers, but it's a way to differentiate the scale of shading from 1 being the lightest, from 10 being the darkest. And what you might notice, or I want you to start noticing in pictures or your own drawings, is that the more values you have in your drawing, the more realistic it's going to look. Of course, if it's something very light, it's not going to have a lot of values, but oftentimes a really deep painting or drawing will have at least one light value, a dark value, and something in the middle. Not necessarily 1, 5, and 10, but 3 things you can differentiate from. And so I put up this painting, a famous Canadian painting by Lauren Harris, as an example of where we might practice observing these values. So I want you to look at this painting and see where you see a really light value, a value that's kind of in the middle, and something that's really dark. And one of the reasons why this painting is so effective is because it has really strong contrasts.
And feel free to put those in the chat, your guesses for which value might go in what part of the painting. Give you a minute to look at it.
Yeah, try and attach numbers to what you see by comparing the value scale to the image. Okay, so I did that too, and what I saw was the shadow side of this hill was the darkest spot, so I put that as a 9. The kind of middle mountain was kind of a middle value, and I put that as a 5, and then the clouds I put as a 1. And while that's what I saw, you might have seen something different. Everyone sees light and dark differently. So if you got a 10 for the mountains or a 3 for the middle value, that's right as well. As long as you're seeing a difference.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
That's the main goal. So now we're going to try adding this back, using this to add shading to your drawing to create depth. But before that, I'm going to give you a tool, basically a way to hold your pencil to help you with shading. So we're going to show you a little video on how to hold your pencil.
All right.
So basically, when you draw an outline,
It's not live. Hold on, Chrystal.
Oh,
Why
sorry.
is it not live? Hang on. You go back to the walk and see if it'll. Jenny, are you seeing that frozen there?
Yeah, do you want to try pressing the space bar?
I did do that a couple of times. Hang on, let me go back to the walk, and then I'm going to try to get there a different way. I'm going to go here. Why is that frozen? It's such a wonderful little video.
well, while you're figuring that out, I can just describe it.
Okay.
and I can use an example.
Okay. With
here.
your hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're showing you is that oftentimes when we draw, we use the same hand hold that we do with writing. Like when I'm writing text, I'll hold my hand kind of like this. I'm left-handed and I write upside down, so just ignore that part. But however you would usually draw, it's oftentimes just how you would also write. But what this does, it creates really hard lines. And when you're shading, you want soft lines. because it's not a line, it's a shadow, it's a shade. So what we would do instead is actually flip your hand over with your pencil. Oh,
Yeah,
there
I
it
think
is.
Jenny's got it on Zoom
so
now.
showing flipping the pencil, laying in your hand, putting the thumb over top, and then flipping it over. So what this does is it forces you to use the side of the pencil. And with the side of the pencil, you're going to get really soft lines, which makes it harder to make really hard lines, which is a good thing. And if you want it to be darker, you just keep going over it a few times until it's as dark as you want. But if you want those really hard lines, then you flip it back over and you stab your paper with it.
Thanks, Chrystal. We worked together there, and thanks, Jenny, for getting that by sharing it on Zoom. And I will say it is in another link that I think Jenny will put in where we've got some list of resources for this program today, and we do have so you can watch the video yourself later. We have a link to that, so thanks, Chrystal. Okay, so now with all those new tools you have in your toolkit, your artistic toolkit, we're going to go back to the walk and give you another chance to draw it. So we'll give it a minute or bit. And we've got a comment in the chat. Neat tip, hadn't heard that before.
Great.
Yeah, I love that tip.
Yeah, and while you're shading, remember that it can take a lot of time. And so don't worry if it doesn't look the way you want it to look right away, because I mean, you could spend 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, while you're watching TV or listening to a podcast doing this. It's a very meditative thing.
Yeah, you said you really enjoy that
I
part.
do. I love shading.
It must be relaxing.
So now you see your walk differently, because now you're noticing that there's a really light area, there's some really dark areas, and there's a lot of something in between. Mm-hmm. And if you want to get real complicated with it, you can see even more values.
There is a question about for shading. Mm-hmm. Is pencil the easiest to shade with, or are other types of drawing materials easier to shade with?
Pencils, if you're doing a pencil drawing, I would recommend just using a pencil, but there are different types of pencils. So they go from, if you notice on your bottom of your pencil, it says either, usually a regular pencil, say HB, which is hard and black. So a B pencil can get really dark, but it's really soft. So that's nice if you want that effect. And an H pencil, so you can get, it goes to scale, like 8B is like really soft, really black, all the way up to B gets lighter. And then you get to the hard pencils, which are really light. So depending on what kind of effect you want and how dark you want, you can play around with the different pencils. You can buy a pencil kit that has all of the different types of pencils in it. So for soft, I'd use a B, 4B, 3B.
Good question. Thanks. Thanks for the more tips. Excellent. So we'll give you a little bit more time, and then we're going to show Chrystal's second drawing, just to give an example. Not that it has to be like Chrystal's, but just to show. And then I think we're going to look at the values with the walk too, aren't we?
Oh, oops.
I think we're going to do that when we
put this.
Yep. Yep, that's good. Okay. All right. You can always go back to your drawing afterwards. So we're going to go back to our PowerPoint and see. There's Chrystal's second drawing.
There.
So yeah,
again,
look at all
not
that
perfect,
shading.
but it's starting to get there, as you can see. And as you go, you can use your eraser and pull out values and make it lighter, and then keep going over areas and fine tune it as you go.
And let's go back and look at put those values next to the real walk there. I think
just
we
put
were
it
gonna,
in there?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you can actually do that with a real
see.
object.
Because you can see the highlights, super dark right around here. It's like a very tiny spot, but there it is. And this kind of medium area is pretty medium 5. It's almost, because it's grayscale as well, you can almost exactly match them.
So if people are trying this at home and something that has reflection on it like that, that's because it's metal, it might be challenging. I don't know. But is there like some easier objects that people might want to start with?
Yes, I recommend people start with a very simple geometric object, maybe like an orange or an apple fruit. What you can also do is put a lamp beside it, and what that does, it creates really strong distinction. So it will create a strong highlight, a middle, and then a shadow. So it's easier to practice with. And you can move the light around, and then once you feel comfortable with those objects, start moving up towards objects that have more variance in their values, something like a bottle, something glass, because they also reflect the table or what's behind it, and so you'll find they might have all 10 different values in there that you can, and it really helps to train your eye to see those different values. It's a great exercise.
Thanks, Chrystal. And I think we're going to put a link in the chat to your website so people can learn more about you. And you have right now an exhibit going on at the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria. Congratulations.
Thank
and that's
you.
on until when?
The end of May.
Okay.
So end of this month.
So if you're on Southern Vancouver Island, get in and see it. I've seen it. It's really beautiful. Really beautiful. But we do have a little bit of time left after that art activity. If anybody has any questions you want to ask Chrystal about her work or her process or her paintings, go ahead and put those in the chat. And you've got Chrystal live for a little bit more. And but one of the things I always wonder, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, is how do you get ideas for your paintings?
Ideas come from everywhere. Sometimes they come from dreams. A lot of the times they come from life experience. Sometimes I'll be walking with a friend chatting about ideas and it will pop up. And I always write down my ideas.
I was going to ask, do you carry a little notebook for ideas or something?
I don't, but I have a terrible memory, and I never want to lose an idea because you might not get to it right away. Maybe you're working, you're busy, and you don't want to forget it. So I keep an idea. Well, I should have a journal, but I just put them in whatever piece of paper I can find.
Or into your phone.
That's a good idea.
On your phone, yeah.
That's a good idea. And so that I remember it later. And then what I do, if that idea is still interesting to me later when I look at it again, then I know that it's something that I need to actually bring to life. Otherwise, some ideas, I would say out of 100 ideas, I might still be interested in 10 of them, and I might execute 4 of them.
Ah.
It's a very low ratio.
Right.
Because we have ideas all the time. They come to us all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Are there any questions in the Facebook that you're seeing, Jenny?
Well, we have a couple of questions. One is, how long does each painting take?
it depends. I work in really large scale. So one of the earlier paintings that I've done, it took me 6 months to do. So, and that could be 300 hours or so for a painting.
Gosh, 300 hours. Wow. It's a long time.
Speaking of scale, like, it's kind of hard to know with just looking at it online. So would it be like as big as like the forest diorama behind you? Is that how big your paintings are? Is it usually smaller?
I have some that size. So my biggest paintings are 8 feet by 6 feet.
And I'm just going to go back because there was a picture way at the beginning that shows Chrystal with, I think, maybe even a couple of your smaller paintings. Apologies.
Yes, because the ones in the photo, I think the pool party I'm standing beside.
There we go.
Yeah. So they're not huge, but they're, well, maybe they are.
They're pretty big.
One's 5 feet by 7 feet, the bigger one. And then this pool one, I think, is 3 feet by 5 feet, 4 by 5 or something.
I can see 300 hours. I can see where that would come
I have
from.
to make them big because I'd like to put a lot of elements into them because that's interesting to me. And if I put too many elements into a small painting, it's very difficult to paint.
Okay.
It becomes too small,
Yeah.
like a miniature.
We have another question about what materials do you use to paint? Do you still start with a pencil outline first and then go over it with paint?
I actually
what's your
use
process?
charcoal. I do a drawing on the canvas in charcoal because when you paint over charcoal, the charcoal blends in with the paint, but graphite doesn't. So graphite can actually seep through the paint and come to the surface, which you don't want. So can Sharpie, which I did. I've made the mistake of doing before. So I put I drew the I don't know why. I drew the drawing with a Sharpie, and then I painted over it, and then, you know, a week later, the Sharpie rises out, and I tried to paint over it, and it came back out.
Oh,
Horrible. So charcoal is the best for me. Or you can draw with paint, take some like a umber type of paint and water it down with mineral spirits and use that as in a thin pencil like paintbrush and use that to draw your drawing first.
good question. Yeah.
Have you ever went to visit Vietnam?
Yes, I did. I went there for 6 months back when I was 28 years old. What year was that? 12 years ago. 14 years ago. And I actually went, I was working there in a place that was very much near where my parents were born and raised. So that gave me a lot of perspective because they came from such a small village, but I had no idea exactly how small. I mean, there were no roads, there's no lights, there was nothing. So still. Yeah.
Still.
Yeah, and my family still lives there, so.
And so do you paint from real life or photographs? Or when you went to Vietnam, do you have some like images that you painted later as well now that you've been there?
Had I taken better photos, I would have. But I paint from photo reference, but I don't use photos that just exist from the past. I create my own photo references. So I come up with the idea, even if I'm painting about a childhood memory, I will get models and I will make a set and I will shoot the photos the way I see them in my head, and then I paint from that. Which is, it's a lot more work, but
it's really interesting.
that's just how I have to do it.
No, you've got to do it that way. And again, on the learning portal there, we did put some of your pictures from that trip to Vietnam. I think they're in there.
Yes.
At least one of them is there. So yeah, you can explore that there. Well, thank you I don't see any other questions there. So thank you for those. I'm just going to go back. Oh, and we're going to just scroll. I wonder what that will do. Nope, that's not going to work. Sorry. I'm just going to have to scroll to the end because there's a couple of slides. One of them is a link to the learning portal, which, as I mentioned, Chrystal did contribute a whole path.
As you're scrolling, Liz, there's a question of what are you working on now?
I am working on a show for anyone who knows the island. It's for Comox Valley Art Gallery that will open in January, and I've invited 2 other artists to work with me, and so we've done some video as well as creating art together. So a lot of those paintings that I'll be doing will be again along the theme of which I often paint, of being of navigating 2 identities, Vietnamese and Canadian identity, and how that shows up in everyday experiences. But the setting will be kind of more natural BC landscapes.
That's great. I'm excited. And when is that opening?
January.
January. Okay. Going up to Comox for that.
Mm-hmm.
Just to let you know, if you're interested, if you happen to be an educator or somebody else who might like a virtual trip like this, but yet virtual visit, we actually have digital field trips that you can book on different topics related to the work of the Royal BC Museum. So there's a link there where you can learn more. So thank you. We just want to say thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Chrystal, for being here and being generous with your time and your tips. You're so free with your artistic tips.
Thanks. I hope everyone had fun and maybe learned something new.
Yeah, I definitely did. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.